Hello, my name is Suteja and I'm going to answer the interview questions. Here is the first question. It really depends on the type of the project, actually. So if the project is for developing a new product, then I would most likely be using the user centered design framework. So, this framework has an entire section dedicated to understanding the user or the discovery phase. So, there's a huge gamut of questions in this phase, which would try to understand the needs of the user, the pain points, the goals of the user, and what the expectations of the user. So these questions answered thoroughly, and the insights drawn from these answers of the users would most likely inform me in the concepting stage of designing an experience. So again, if it's a new product that I will be involved in, then I would probably go a step further. And even before starting to interview the users, I would try to understand the business objectives. So I would ask a few questions regarding that to the right people, to the right stakeholders, and would also try to understand the technological feasibility for developing the product. So those are some of the questions that I would like to be answered before I start designing a user experience. This would again depend on the type of project it is, if it's a redesign project or if it's a new product development. So if it's a redesign project, which is the case in which is the most likely case, then I would start the user flow a couple of steps before the point where the redesign needs to take place. But it's always beneficial to start a user flow right from the beginning, right from the starting point, to clearly understand how the user goes through the journey and how the user interacts with the app, and it would clearly highlight any pain points or any issues the user has with the product. So yes, so it really depends. And of course, if it's a new product development, then most definitely it would be having all the steps including onboarding and the initial phase of interaction of the user with the app. I've come to find that it is quite beneficial to have a mindset where you almost expect a change in requirement as you're designing an experience. After all, UCD is an iterative process and change is built into the process and the framework. So, that being said, when there's a change requirement, I would probably first try to figure out the reason behind the change and where it's coming from. So, if it's a change in business objective or a business need, I will then try to see how it balances off with the user requirement and how it affects the users' needs and users' expectations. So, if there is a big deviation, then obviously I will try to find a balance and a compromise between the objectives of the business and the user needs. And I would try to advocate to build the product keeping the user in mind. So I would use enough logical reasoning unearthed from my insights of the user to put my case forward or put my proposal forward, and try to have a compromise. After all, at the end of the day, building an experience is really a compromise between the business objective and the user's requirements. I think the first design tool that I learned was Adobe XD. The reason being it's platform agnostic. Over time, I've also learned InVision Studio. I've used it for wireframing and prototyping. I've also used various other softwares, web-based softwares like Balsamic, Marvel, and I've used Sketch to a certain extent. I'm also planning to use Principle for motion design. What I've come to realize from all these tools is that the design tools are quite similar to each other, and when one tool is thoroughly studied and learned, and if you can do anything with one tool, it's quite easy. The learning curve is not that much with any other tool. So that brings me to the point which I was going to make, that what tool would I use? It would completely depend on the company I'm working for and the team I'm working for, because I believe each team and a company would have their own pick of software, and I'm quite confident that I would be able to pick up any new tool, design tool especially, quite quickly, because the logic would be the same in most of these design tools. And yes, I use pen and paper quite often. During the initial phase of concepting, I find that I have so many different ideas brimming in my head, and it's the quickest if I use pen and paper to jot down my ideas. So, to keep the flow and to bring, and in an attempt to bring out all my ideas down, I first start off the first phase of concepting with pen and paper and wireframing on the pen and paper, and then I take the best ideas from that, and try to use a design tool to create an electronic version of the wireframe. Those were the 4 interview questions answered. Thank you for your time.